Hey guys, it's Sam here, and today we're going to be asking, is Slack a good thing? So before all you Slack fans out there burn down my house, just make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can hear future things that will make you annoyed. But I know for many of you, you love Slack. You love using it. It's really convenient. It's always there. It's on your phone. It's on your laptop or your desktop. You can message everyone instantly. You've got your groups, your channels. Slack can do a lot of things. The question I'm asking is not whether you like it or not. The question I'm asking is whether it's a good thing. Now, my personal journey with Slack is when it got brought into the advertising agency I was working at. I was not a fan. I actually declined to use it a lot. There was real pressure on particular teams. They were like, we only communicate in Slack now. And at the time, I was a client-facing person. I was an account man, so I was like, well, I have to use email. You can want to send less emails, but I have to use email anyway because that's what our clients use. So suddenly you're giving me another thing, and now I have to check two things. And I don't want to check two things. That takes up too much of my time. So I'm going to stick on the email thing, which you also have to use because you have external people too. This did not make me very popular with the team who tried to introduce it. But at the time, I thought, look, I've only got so many hours in the day. I've only got so much of an attention span. This is how I'm going to prioritize it. And also, I'm the floor above you. If there's a problem, come and speak to me. But Slack since then has really infiltrated a lot of workplaces. It's relied on a huge amount, and there's some real benefits to it too. If Slack isn't something you use yet, Slack is an instant messaging service on steroids. So you can message people immediately. You can set up what are called channels, which I guess in olden day parlance are chat rooms. You can send documents on them. I think you can send clips and GIFs and all sorts of things. It's a very powerful instant messaging service. And a lot of companies have brought it in and it's almost replaced email internally. They go, we've had enough of email. We send too many emails. We'll get Slack instead. And it's had some benefits. It's something that everyone can use. It can go on almost any device. You can set up these channels so people feel they can have one with their buddies and they can have one with their team. I was working in a computer game studio and they loved it because it was very easy to send code across. It was very easy to share code and it wouldn't have everything kind of messed with. So from that perspective, it was really useful. And another company I was working with, they had offices abroad, and it was very easy to communicate between teams in different time zones as well, in different offices. Or if you're working remotely, it gives you a lot of ways of communicating. There are some benefits to Slack. It brings people together in that communication sense. It's one port of call for everyone to use. And people seem to really like it. Why wouldn't you? Because if you love WhatsApp in your personal life or Facebook Messenger, you'll probably love the same principles applied to your working life. But for me, those couple of benefits or that main benefit that everyone can use it is not enough. We've got to ask the questions, okay, so what's it costing? What's it costing us? And I think here there's a few things we really need to think about. And if you use Slack at work, I think it's really worth thinking about. And if you're a more senior person, you're thinking of implementing Slack, I would also think there's some things you have to think about. I think number one we have to think about is, do you want another thing people have to communicate through? So they're almost certainly already using emails. They'll have mobile phones. They'll probably have messaging services on those. They can walk over face to face in a lot of instances. Slack is another thing. Slack is not a replacement for anything. It's not a replacement for emails. Certainly not at the moment, because emails serve a very specific purpose of it's communication between organizations. Slack is much more internally focused. So the question is, do you need to throw another thing in the mix? And to that point, does it replace emails or is it another thing alongside emails? Because whilst your emails sent may reduce, the amount of instant messages you'll send is definitely going to exponentially increase. Apart from the fact you're getting fewer emails, that's still as much typing, if not more. So the question is, do we need another tool? The second question I'd ask is, how much distraction should we tolerate? Slack is a really invasive tool. Emails are too, and if we have notifications pinging off for our emails, that'll certainly be distracting. But emails, because of the way we view emails, because they're not an instant messaging service, you tend to write more in fewer emails. So even if you have a lot of emails pinging in, the chances are they'll be doing so less regularly. With Slack, it's like WhatsApp or anything else. These things are firing in constantly. People will write little one-word replies or short sentences. So you have constant distraction flooding in. If you're trying to do something really thinky or difficult or challenging, do you need that level of distraction all the way through your day? Or is actually that preventing you from doing things that are more valuable? Which takes us on to point 3. Is Slack too easy? Is it decreasing the quality of our communication? There's that great quote, which is, "Sorry, my letter was so long, I didn't have enough time to write less." With that ease of communication comes laziness. Comes things like, "Oh, I can't find this file, so I won't bother looking because I know they'll just reply on Slack, so I'll just throw that out there. I've got a question, I don't want to think about it for myself, so I'll just fire that into Slack and see what the other person says." It's an overload of communication. It's too easy to communicate, so we don't necessarily do the work in our heads that could prevent us from spilling work onto someone else. It's too simple to just dive right in there and start typing without really thinking through of how much work this is generating outside. Which takes us on to the next point. Is Slack making people scared? Now, I would argue for a lot of people, yes. I did a session recently, I did a workshop in a company where we got onto the subject of Slack, and there was palpable fear from a number of the participants in this workshop about being away from their Slack for any extended period of time. And when I say extended period of time, I mean over about 10 minutes. The assumption was that they would be contactable all of the time ever. And the thought that they would be leaving their boss or their colleague hanging by not being at Slack all the time was causing them to feel fear. Now, because of all the other work we're doing, we know that when you're afraid, you do not do very good cognitive work. You're not very good at problem solving, creativity, your emotional intelligence plummets, and you can't really learn things. So Slack, if it's making people afraid, then it's doing a horrible job. People are already afraid they're missing emails, but throwing Slack into that situation is like throwing a hand grenade in. It's terrifying. It's too stimulating. We've got this dopamine just absolutely kicking off every time you get a message, and then you've got the fear and the cortisol coming from being away from it. And that leads me to my conclusion, which is Slack a good thing? And the answer obviously is it depends what you're doing and who you work for. But for a lot of people who are using it, I would argue, no, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it adds enough to your organization to make up for the downsides. There are too many costs. And in a world of constant distraction, Slack is simply too distracting to add real value to our work. Now, that's my position on it, and I'm sure so many people will have so many opposition to that point of view, and I'd love to hear them down below. Let's start a real conversation around that, and I think there'll be some people for who find Slack difficult too. Let's hear from that as well. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and until we speak next time, take care.